All right, so in this video, I'm actually going to be going over Project 3, which is everything that you guys are going to be doing this week. And this is a part of a review. If you look through the actual section, you'll see what each day and what questions on the final exam it actually hits. And so in this case here, we're going to be doing a text-based Streamlit that's optional depending on which one you want to do. Project 3 game, adventure game. So, for example, in this case, it's pretty much going to be a 3 day kind of project gaming thing done in class. Um, the setup for day one is we just pretty much started with Project 3. I showed you guys where you can go to design your own map if you'd like, or you can draw it on a piece of paper if you'd like, or work through Canva, whatever is up your alley. Just as long as there is a bare minimum of 4 rooms and a max, you can have 8. Um, but this should be able to connect through some sort of device. So similar to when we did with the grid game where we did WASD, we can use north, east, south, west labels just as long as the user knows what labels, what they need to type in. And we kind of went through this first part where we did the introduction. We went through the while loop portion of it and where we didn't get to the point of implementing certain rooms all the way. So that's what we're going to continue on with in this video, along with everything that we're going to be doing for today. Now, at the very top, I showed you guys if you have no idea where to even start or what you want to do, you'd click on this link here and it'll redirect you to this page of that I kind of put together here of different projects, examples that you can use. Haunted Library Escape text adventure game. I went down to the very bottom and I'm working on the cyber heist one. So in that case, it won't be, please don't do the exact same thing that you see in this video for your project. Add a little bit to it while you're reviewing for the exam. So in this case here, we're going to start off where we left off. And I'm going to be using section 4's code. So for section 2, I'll kind of show you just the tiny difference, which is just the naming of the function. And then we will get started here. All right, so for section 2, we called the first function introduction. I called it for section 4 planning phase. So what we're going to do is for section 2, you're just going to go ahead and change the introduction to planning phase. And then you're going to go down to the while loop and just change the call to the introduction to planning phase. That's what we're going to be using from here on out. But that's just for section 2. For section 4, we have planning phase already. All right. All right, so in the first part here, we know that we are going to be adding in rooms. This is going to be using our world map. Um, so we'll pick up where we left off here. All right, so at the very top here in our print, what we're going to do is just go and rewind back to the very top. So we want to finish this function right here, the height phase or the heist phase. And so we're going to go ahead and add in our finishing touches, and then we will move on to the next process. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to have our else statement, and we're just going to print. So we're going to just finish out our front room route that we have created here. If the player chooses the planner role, we already have the safe outcome with more like lower risk and decent like payout. So, which is what we have here. Now I'm just going to add an else for all of the other roles. In that case, the guard is going to is more suspicious. And so the risk level goes up more, but the money gained is going to be a lot higher because of the riskier moves. So in this case here, I'm just going to have a guard looks at you a little too long. Your ID almost doesn't scan. Right? Now we have something called state. Here we're going to do risk underscore levels. And we're going to increment this by 3. Risk levels a little bit higher, like I mentioned earlier. And then here we're going to have the money gained be a little bit more because it's a little riskier. So we'll have 9,000 there. All right, so now we want to go ahead and actually add in some our events. Since we've already added in a role for the front, we're going to add in vent routes as the elif part. This is just going to describe what's going to happen if our player goes through the ventilation system. If the role is the hacker, then this path is going to give them a smaller risk increase and a little bit more decent money because they're good with tech and can help the heist later. Otherwise, the else part, we're going to the vents are going to be slower and more awkward. So risk and money both change differently. So in this case here, we're just going to do elif, and we're going to use our state dictionary that we passed in, route. And we're going to inquire, or in this case, do comparison equivalent to vents. And then inside of the elif statement here, I'm just going to, again, make a message. So I'm just going to say message V for vent. And I'm just going to use our single quotes here. And I'm just going to say maintenance hatch clanks shut behind you as you crawl into the ventilation system. And we're going to go to this line and we're going to say, we're going to make this a new line as well. The mental or the metal, not mental, the metal tunnels are cramped and hot, buzzing with the sound of hidden machinery. Okay, new line here. Now the next one we're gonna do is through the vents. You catch glimpses of offices and security checkpoints below. All right, so now we have our message. We want to make sure that we print out our message. Again, you can do multiple prints in this way, but I want to do it in one string here. So I'm just going to do print, and then I'm going to do message V for events. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do is we want to have an if statement here. So we're going to use our if branching statement to say, okay, if the state and the role that the user picked is equivalent to, oops, or I'm sorry, not the role, the route that the user picked is equivalent to the vent. Then here we're going to have, oh, wait. I was right. I'm sorry. It's the role, not route. Thinking I didn't already do this. All right. So in this case here, we have if the role is equivalent to hacker. All right. Then here we're just going to have a hacker message. So we're just going to do message H equals. And again, we're going to put our 3 quotes here because we can have strings that are single, double, or triple, just as long as you start and end with the same process. So in this case here, we're just going to have, well, we can actually make this a print statement. It's not multiple lines, it's just one. So we'll actually make this a print statement since it's one line and not multiple things that we're trying to print out. So we're going to say you plant small signal boosters along the way, making later hacks easier. All right. So now here we're going to update our state or our risk level for the hacker. And it's going to be equivalent to, it's going to be incremented by 1. And then we have our money gained. And we're going to make this, added on by 6,000 here. Now we're going to have an else statement for other individuals that are not in the vent and that are not the hacker. So we're just going to print out. It takes longer than expected. Security cycles change while you crawl. All right. Then what we're going to do here is update the risk level here for everybody else. It's going to be increasingly higher. So we're going to increment by 2. Then we're going to have our state here, money underscore gain. And then here we're going to have plus equals 7,000 here. All right. So because it's higher risk, we have higher rewards. So that is the route for vents. And hopefully if you are modifying or changing or doing a completely different project, you kind of have followed through with the pattern of what you would be doing here in this section. So we're also going to add one for the remote route. All right. And for the remote route, we're going to use, because in branching you have if, elif, we're going to use elif again. State, and we're going to have the route. And we're going to check to see if the route is remote. And remember, whatever you typed in at the top, if it's all lowercase here, you want to keep it all lowercase. If it's not, you want to make it the same because you're going to be reusing it here. So I'm comparing the route if it's equivalent to remote. Then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make a message that is remote. And we're going to have our 3 strings here. So new line here, we're going to say you sit in a dark van parked in an alley, screens glowing around you, \n, where then now we're going to just say, and that's just going to give us a new line here. Now we're just going to say code scrolls down your laptop as you probe firewalls and spoof credentials, \n. Now we're going to say rain patters softly on the roof while the city's data pulses all around you like a digital ocean. All right, so now that we have our message done here, what we actually want to do is just go ahead and print it out. So we're going to do message R. All right. Now the next step here is we want to add, while we're adding the remote route, this is actually going to be when the player stays in the van and hacks from outside. If the role is hacker, then their element is low risk. Okay, money. If they're not the hacker, they still break through, but it's sloppier, so the risk goes up more and the money reward is a little bit different. So here we're just going to do elif. Oops. Already did that. Here we're just going to do if, rather. If the state role is equivalent to hacker. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to print out a statement saying you slip past most of the defense, oops, defenses unnoticed. Then here we're going to have the state, and we're going to make sure the risk level is not very high for hacker. So we're going to do plus equals 1. And then we're also going to make sure that we update the money gained. Oops, make sure I spell that right. And we're going to do plus equals 5,000 here. All right, now we're going to have our else statement. Now this is where it's going to be everybody else. So we're going to say you managed to break through, but you leave a messy digital trail, which is not good for a hacker. So now we're going to do the risk level being a lot higher or a little bit higher than the hacker, so B2. And then we'll do the state where we have the money gained. Just want to make sure I named it right. Okay. Money gained, and we're going to make that plus equals 4,000. All right, so now that we're done with the remote role, we need to now get to the social role. And in this case, we're just going to do elif again. So elif, if the route is equivalent, to social, then what we're going to do, and we're going to have our message S, which is the social. And here we're just going to have our new line here. And we're just going to say, dressed like a consultant, you ride elevator. Okay. Up with a briefcase full of forged documents. All right, then we have the floor you step onto smells faintly of expensive coffee and new carpet. New line. Employees rush past, too busy to really look if you stay confident. All right. So now we have this specific message here. We're going to go ahead and print it out. We're going to do message S. Oops. All right. And then the next thing what we want to do is update our risk level. So this is going to be, for example, this is the last route, the social route, and this is where the player needs to pretend to belong there. If their role is the inside person, then they're good at talking and they get through the lower risk, through without with lower risk, and then they have a stronger payout. Else or otherwise, they have to bluff harder, so the risk goes a bit higher, but they still make it inside and earn some money. So that's what the next section is all about. So we want to update the state, the role. If the role is equivalent to inside, then we're going to print out you chat your way past two checkpoints and into a secure office. Then afterwards, what we're going to do is we have the state. We're going to update the risk level. Oops, needs to be a string because we're updating it with the key. And then we're going to add to the points equals 1. And then we're going to update in the dictionary that we have the money gained using the key. And we're going to do plus equals 6,500. All right. So now that we have this as the money that they're gaining, right? And you know what? For a heist, this seems really low. So I'm just going to add extra zero. So we'll have, oops, zero. All right, there we go. We'll insert an extra zero for all of the funds because I think 50,000 may be worth you being a heist or a hacker of the sort. So we'll just make it a little bit higher. So we'll have 65,000 be what you get if you're the inside person working on a social front. So now the next part of this, no matter which route the player picks, we now need to move them to the data vault. And that's why we need to print a description of the vault room and then show 3 choices, the maximum money and risk, a balanced option, or a more moral option. And so we store the player's choice inside of a variable, and then we're going to pretty much use input here in this section. So this is all going to be added only after we finish our else statement. So we already have the insider position here. All we got to do is now print out, oops, print out a message saying your story almost falls apart. But you bluff your way through. Okay. Not a very good liar, which is okay. It's a good thing. State. Then we have our risk level. And that's going to be 2 versus the 1 because you're not as prepared or you're not as well knowledgeable as, an insider. So we're going to do money gained and we're going to have plus equals 65,000 here. And I think I'll just update this for the actual insider to be 75,000. It sounds about decent. All right. So now that we've finished this part here, we're going to move on to the next part, which is the vault scene and the final choice of what the user should be able to pick. Now, in this case, no matter which route the player picks, we have to print this out. So this is going to be added after our if, elif block. So right about here. And this is going to be multiple prints that are happening. So what I'm going to do is just print out or create a variable called message v. Or actually message output, because this is what's being outputted to the user. And for this, we're just going to use again our triple quotes /n, and we're just going to say you reach the data vault room at last /n. Racks of quantum drives sit behind thick glass lit by a soft blue glow. New line here. Then we're going to say a central terminal stands on a pedestal waiting for the right key code or the wrong mistake. All right, then the next thing we're going to look at is the final choice. So I'm going to say final choice, like here. And then we're gonna have a tab. So I'm gonna do a tab here. And I'm just gonna say one, grab as much data as fast as possible. Big money, big risk. Then the same thing, two tabs, and then we're gonna do two. Take only the most incriminating files. Moderate money and lower risk. Then next one, and I think actually we will put a new line after each one of these. So we're going to do two tabs here and do three. And then we're going to say plant a virus to expose the company for free. Wow, little money, moral win. Nice. And then in this new line, we have a new line here, so we don't have to worry about anything else. Now that we have this all in one little segment, we're going to print it out. We're just going to print out message output because I've already used message v up above. So we have message output here. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to allow the user to input some value or some string. So we're going to say choice equals, and we're going to input here. Enter your choice. All right. And then what we're going to do is use our strip function that is going to strip any extra spaces here. All right. So now that we have this here, we now need to move on to update our states based off of the final choice that the user has here, right? So in this case, what we're actually wanting to do is we need to make sure that we use our choices. So now the next thing we're going to do is have our if else's statements update that state by the final choice that the user picked. So underneath this line here, we're going to say if choice is equivalent to the string one, and we're using the string one because up here we've assigned one for the routes, we've assigned a string for the roles. So we're going to allow the user to pick. So in this case here, what we're going to do is print, you shovel data into your drives at top speed. Alarms begin to chirp in the background. And so we're just going to stick with the same mechanisms of using numerical value as strings here for the choices from the user. So the next thing we want to do is update our state and the money gained. Plus equals. All right, then we have the state risk underscore level here. And it needs to be a string as well because this is the key. And we're going to increment this by 2 because that's the risk level. The next thing we're going to do is do our elif choice. And we're going to set that to be 2. And then we're going to print out here, you target only the juiciest, most useful files. And then in this case here, we're going to make the money that we update, or the money gained rather, we're going to increment that by 30,000. State risk level plus equals 1. All right. Then we have our else statement here. Then we're going to print out here. You upload a custom virus that will leak the company's secrets to the public. Then here we have the state, and we're going to say the crew morale. And we're going to update that to be 1. And then the state, the risk level, we're update that to be level increased by 1. So we will have our crew morale boosted and our risk level boosted as well. All right. So the next part of this is just printing the ending and the marks, the game over, just to complete certain parts, but we will have to add on to this, right? So in this part here, we want to add at the very end of our height phase here, we're going to look at the final values in the state and choose one of the several endings at the end. And then we're going to set this state with the game over to be true and return that specific state. Again, you can modify the rest of this however you'd like, but this is just the setup for kind of the skeleton of what we have so far. So now what I'm going to do is print a new line here and header as this heist outcome. Okay. And we're just going to put a new line here as well at the end. All right. So now in this case here, we're going to say if the state risk level is greater than or equal to 6, then we're going to print out ending. The corp traces you in real time. Print. You barely escape with your freedom, abandoning most of the score as you run. Then we'll have our elif. Elif, and then we're going to have, in the elif, we need to have our statement, the state, and we're going to check the key or check the value associated to the key money gained is greater than or equal to 100,000. Then here we're just going to print ending, and we're going to say clean getaway with big score. And then we're going to print out you or your crew celebrates already planning how to lay low and enjoy the payout. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the elif state crew morale is greater than 3 and state, I'm sure they're both related here, money gained is less than 6,000 here. And remember, I'm using the and here, so that means this has to be true, and also this has to be true for the code below to be executed. So what we're going to do here is print ending. You didn't get rich, but your virus exposes the company's corruption. And we have another print statement. Your crew feels strangely proud, not rich, but right. Then we have our else statement here, and we're just going to print it out saying ending, and we have small ooh, payout, but stay under the radar. All right, then we have a print statement here, and we're just gonna say the city keeps turning and somewhere another job, oops, another job awaits. Isn't it just okay? There we go. All right, so now we have our heist outcome. So we have the beginning-ish and the end a little bit. We will have to modify some of this, but we got a bit of a skeleton. Now we need to go ahead and update our game over to be true. So we need to access that dictionary by using the key game underscore over. And we're going to update this by assigning true to that specific key because originally it's false. Now, the next thing we're going to do is use our return statement to return the state dictionary that we passed in. All right. So now that we've kind of completed this, we have our final version that we've kind of gone through. Just to explain what we went through in main, we have our main function with our beginning initialization of our specific gameplay states, which is 0. And then we have our print statement just to initialize. This is the name of the adventure game that they're playing. Then we have our movement mechanism that we're going to build on. So pretty much this while loop will keep on going until the state is not true. And so right now it's false. Um, or it will keep on going while the state is not true. And then when the state becomes true, then it will break out of that. But right now we have our if state location is planning, and at the present we did initialize that to be planning, then this initiates the first function call to our planning state function, which we had a little bit of our intro, the header. We created our dictionary for the roles. We created our dictionary for the route. And we also returned that specific state as well with the updates of the route. Then what happens here in our main, it returns the state from that, and then we get our elif state. The next one would be the heist, and then it calls the heist. And because we return the updated state there, that gets stored into this state. And we also have our entry point here using our if name main to initialize or initiate our main function call. So this is what we have so far. This is what would be done after day 1. So now what we want to do is focus on day 2 for today's for the next day.